Thank you everybody for being here. And everybody know Emily from the CRA and Christopher also from the CRA. As a member of the CRA board, we have many concerns with this part of town, the western part of this neighborhood. Emily have, with this idea, they put together this team, they call it UNET, the Neighborhood Enhancement Team, to participate, to put together this idea or the different organizations to get organized the neighbors and to get something going on in this part of the town. And the main idea is to put together, we don't want to replace the neighborhood association, we don't have to replace other organizations who are working directly in this part of town. Our main idea is to work with these organizations and coordinate different activities. We thank you very much to the sheriff office or the representative to be with us. And thank you, Andy Amoroso, our commissioner, to always, you make concerns to be part of the community, and you are going to, you mentioned to me, you're going to be offered concrete plans. They can invite all the neighborhoods to come to work together. You know, I don't want to be ungrateful for anybody. Like I said, everybody is welcome. But the main issue is we had to create a group of citizens or neighborhoods who live in this town, place of town. Like they say, it's easy to get the fish, but we don't want to get the fish any longer. We have to teach the neighbors to learn how to fish. And this is the main objective of this organization. I spent the last weekend with my wife going through this, the avenue, business by business, talking with the neighbors, to business owners, invite them to come to this meeting. And I was assuming it was a great response. Many of the owners' business, they were promised me to be here. But obviously it was just for the moment. And for me, it's the most challenging subject we have in our community to bring everybody to. I don't know how will be the magic bullet to start bringing everybody, just participate, do something. I don't want the same small group of dedicated citizens to do the whole job. We want to expand on our rights, so expand. But I don't know, with our ideas, with your ideas, we had to have a plan to start bringing more people to come to participate to this kind of meeting. Thank you very much, and I'll give you Emily. She will be explain as generic stuff what are our goals with this enhancement team, and she put together a presentation, and I hope you can enjoy it. And thank you to be here one more time.
Thanks, Ozzy. Actually, I'm going to take it. Most of y'all know me. My name's Chris Rose. If you don't know me, or if you haven't met me, I'm with the CRA and the project manager and the planner with the CRA. And I've been on the staff for the last 7 years. And we did this, actually, the same presentation or something pretty close to that 7 years ago. And we tried this 7 years ago, and it didn't succeed as it should have. It kind of fizzled and died off. And we're trying to resurrect it. And I think we have a good board, a much better board, the CRA board, this time around that can really help us push this thing through. We have Ozzy, we have Chip that showed up also. He's Chip Guthrie, our CRA board member that showed up. We appreciate that. Commissioner Amoroso, all PBSO staff, we really appreciate it. Unfortunately, we did try to get city staff to also come here, and still waiting for them to show up, but hopefully someone from city staff, especially the code or public works department, comes in tonight to also help us explain what we're trying to do. Again, this is very informal. I got a quick PowerPoint presentation, and then after that, just really open up to questions and really suggestions. It's not what we're this isn't what we're trying to tell you to do or what we can offer to do, or what. It's kind of what everyone can do together and how to help not only the western neighborhoods that are really the most blighted, but really use this as an example for the entire city and all the residents living in the area. Real quickly before you go forward, I'm just going to backtrack on the NSP project that we had. We just wrapped up on that. If you don't know, that completed February this year. We built or rehabbed over 80 new units, residential units, most of them on the west side of Dixie Highway. They're primarily, most of them were for sale and they're occupied. There were a few rentals. That doesn't include the new urban arts lofts, which are being filled right across the street. We also land banked a couple properties, about a dozen properties as well, that would be used for future residential use. Right now there's grass, empty lots, and we're also used NSP funds as leverage for a multi-million-dollar project on 6th and F Street. That will be a 55 unit affordable rental complex on the corner of 6th and F Street. We're doing more demos and construction this year, going into next year. Residential properties, single-family homes, and those will be done by the CRA and Habitat for Humanity, and those will all be taking place on the west side of Dixie Highway as well. So we have about 3 or 4 more new units which we'll be building hopefully within the next year to 2 or 3 years. NSP dollars were also used to infuse over $1.7 million directly into the City of Lake Worth's general fund, either through fees or paying back code fees or building permits, stuff like that. $1.7 million of that $23 million grant that we received 3 years ago actually went back to the city directly. As far as infrastructure goes, the NSP grant was used to fund the replacement or installation of 60 new sidewalks at over 60 different locations throughout the city. And we also removed or replaced over 45 vacant, abandoned, unsafe, foreclosed properties also within a 3-year period. Demoed and replaced with a new single-family or duplex. This is just things. The next few slides are going to be some photos of before and afters. This is at the block away on the corner of First South and F Street. That was an empty lot before, sitting next to a city-owned property which was boarded up. After that, NSP dollars created a new home for a family living there now. Actually, two Habitat homes were built there. This is on D Street, South D Street. This home was actually, that whole block actually, South D Street was used for a lot of prostitution was taking place on the South D Street from Lake South to First and Second Avenue South. That property was demolished. There's a new duplex built by adopted family. Same here, it's on South F Street, new duplex. Single-family homes, this is an example of a single-family home that was built by Habitat for Humanity. It's on the corner of East Street and 4th Avenue South. This is in Tropical Ridge. This neighborhood was, or this property was torn down, and a new single-family home for sale was built on North 8th Street right there. And CRA built a home too, a single-family home, which we're still trying to sell. This is on Lake Avenue. That was the property beforehand, and afterwards we tore down this property and built a brand new single-family home there as well. So the net team, the net team that we're trying to create, and Ozzy's helping us with that. Also, PBSO and liaisons with PBSO are also going to try to help us create this neighborhood enhancement team. And that's really just a team of residents, business owners, whoever interested, living anywhere within the city to help us fix the problems while recognizing the opportunities that exist out there. There's lots of problems with crime, infrastructure, lack of community outreach between government and the people, and just housing conditions in general. We're going to primarily focus on the western neighborhoods. However, this plan to really open up for all residents living in the city and all throughout the area. Our goals are, the CRA goals specifically are energy conservation, addressing code issues, limiting limit light, health and safety issues, preserving and protecting historical characteristics of the neighborhoods and the homes, and also increasing the values of the neighborhoods and the city in general. Because those increased values are invested back in, at least from the CRA's perspective, invested back into the city in our CRA district. It's kind of just the general area of what we're focusing on, area west of Dixie. However, again, if this succeeds, we could expand this citywide. Initially, we thought of consisting this net team of only 5. Well, it has to be at least. We prefer at least 5 members. However, diverse, able to assist with communicating between the neighborhoods and the CRA, recommending projects and programs to us, making infrastructure improvements, how we can improve the infrastructure that's deteriorated out there, educating their neighbors, and evaluating and recommending new projects within this target area. And again, the NET team would really be working with us to help schedule neighborhood cleanups, cleaning of the alleyways, properties that are overgrown, applying for grants, and just really reporting current conditions, a better pipeline of form of communication between the residents to the CRA, to the city, and to the PBSO. And these are some links that we have that are opportunities that are out there, grants, awards, other programs that are out there, nonprofits that are out there to help us with addressing the needs of the area. I think that's all I have for the slides. I don't know if there's anything else. That's all we really have for a presentation. So now it's just, we're trying to figure out how to go about doing this and how do we continue.
Like I mentioned before, the really challenging for us, create a plan, create a link that everybody interested outside this neighborhood to bring the neighbors to group together. Like for example, maybe Andy Amoroso, the commissioner, can explain that maybe you can present some concrete plan. We can invite the neighbors to come together with this something specific.
One thing that we identified in this neighborhood, we've been doing a lot of cleanups on the western side, and one thing that we identified is the same people show up all the time. The people in this room don't necessarily show up when we do the cleanups. They may come and give us a lot of good energy and a lot of good ideas, and we take that out in the neighborhood, but we need more of the people in this room to actually participate. We need more of the neighbors in this neighborhood to participate. Sarah Parr lives in this neighborhood. She came to me with a list of 20 or 30 properties and said, what can we do? She said, you know, the Guatemalan people that live in my neighborhood are a very peaceful people. They're great neighbors, but there needs to be some education done, which every time we have a meeting, it comes back to education. We need to speak in their languages. There's 8 different languages spoken in these neighborhoods. We need to reach out to the people that want to help, that speak the language. You know, again, we are traditionally white people going into a Hispanic, a Haitian neighborhood. We need more input and more participation from the people that live in those neighborhoods. PBSO a few years ago reached out, and they have Benito now that actually reaches out to the people that live in that neighborhood, but we need more participation. One thing that Sarah and I had come up with is trying to educate and some of the basic things about when the garbage needs to go out, when the bulk. One thing we see in these neighborhoods is there's a lot of bulk going out, and it's just going out in front of the houses, beds and TVs and things. And some of it's just education, but we need to be able to go out in a true form and educate them and clean up while we're there. So what we've done is Sarah and I have reached out, and we've reached out to our garbage people and said, you know, how can we do this financially that doesn't impact the city? And also reach out and do it when there's a bulk pickup. So we don't have double pickups, we're not doing the work twice. So what we've kind of identified, and we're working with the CRA and Emily, is Solid Waste Authority will give us vouchers. Vouchers will pay our offset for dumpsters. So what we'd like to do is one of the first reach outs, cleanups, is actually address the area with what we call a cleanup. We'll go out and we'll do some basic cleanups, but also education. For instance, I went to get my eyes checked last week, and the woman that did my eyes is from Guatemala. And she said, I would love to come out and translate for you. So I'm going to reach out to her and bring her in as a translator to say, you know, we're going to be out in the neighborhood on these days. The dumpsters will be out on these days. Put as much as you can in these dumpsters. We have the bulk coming in. There's no additional cost to the city because solid waste will actually give us vouchers, and we'll actually start trying to take a proactive stand and make an impact, and actually try to get some of them involved, piece them into our community. For instance, you said you knocked on doors of different merchants in the area. How many people in this room are a merchant on the west side? Thank you. Thank you. Very few participate for whatever reason. We need to go above and beyond and reach out to them and try to, if it's forming a merchants association for the west side, if it's whatever we can do to get them involved, because whatever we're doing or whatever we did didn't work. You heard Chris say, you know, they did this program 7 years ago, and we're still looking at it 7 years later. So we need to reinvent the wheel. We need ideas from you, and we need participation. You know, PBSO, every time we do a cleanup, their guys are out there, they're watching us, they're helping, they bring the little bikes and they take the garbage from one point to the other. They're volunteers. Same thing, certain volunteers in this room show up every time. Chip always comes out with his lawnmower, and we go through and we pick things up, and he comes through with a lawnmower and mows that, but we need to pump it up. We need to aggressively knock on our neighbors' doors and say, what can we do to get you involved? Same thing with all the new CRA houses. All these people need to get involved, but a lot of them don't know how to get involved. They're new to the area. We need to actually knock on their door and say, this is what we need from you. We need you to participate. Somebody said, you know, if you do a barbecue, everybody comes out for free food. If that's what we need to do, let's do a barbecue. If it means doing a barbecue in the neighborhood and get everybody out and feed the children and get the parents working and everybody helping and you meet your neighbors, let's do it. But we need suggestions tonight. That's why we're here. It's kickstarting it and getting suggestions, things that may have worked, things that may not have worked, things that may not have been thought about, things might have come up 7 years ago that work now and didn't work then. Javier, I know you're in the middle of those neighborhoods. I mean, you've seen it for years and years and years.
We're doing it.
Okay.
We're doing it. It's just that we don't communicate with CRA or you, but we're doing it.
Okay.
But I'll have suggestions later on.
Absolutely. So, you know, that's the whole thing is we all need to work together, we need to piece it together, and we need to make sure everybody's on the same page. And if your groups are doing cleanups, they're doing it on the same day we're doing cleanups, so we're not, a lot of it does come down to the city. You know, we have certain days for bulk pickup. And if we're doing 3 or 4 bulk pickups or 3 or 4 cleanups, that's a burden on the financial piece of the city. We need to make sure that we look at our little bulk pickup, and every cleanup we do, every time we do reach out, that it's matching what's going on in that neighborhood. So there's not additional cost to the city. But prior to that, if our bulk pickup for that neighborhood is on a Wednesday, that weekend prior, we need to be knocking on doors and saying, you know, bulk pickup, educating in those languages, and making sure that everybody's on the same page. For instance, you know, we were talking to the western side, we were talking to the east side. The east side doesn't have as much rentals, so they'd like a little bit more greenery pickup because they trim and they do more. On the west side, we need a little bit more bulk pickup because we do have more rentals and more, but it comes down to an educational process. So I think that's what this team really needs to start addressing, and again, it's open for comments. Yes? I'll take her first a second.
My name's Nancy Howard. We live up on 18th Avenue, but I teach at North Grade. And
Yes.
my husband and I were talking about the communication piece. We read the newspaper. We assume families read the newspaper. Can we get some of this information in the school newsletter that goes home every month? You know, we're gonna have a bulk pickup on this street. Bring your stuff to the dumpster located at whatever. You know, might be a better way to communicate to these families. We assume they go on the computer. You know, my special ed class, I have 15 kids, 1 goes on the computer at home. You know, so just looking at different ways to connect with those families.
Absolutely, and that's one thing too, outside this group with the CRA and with the new programs we'll be doing here, we want you to participate as a teacher because we want to reach out to those children. We have computers here that need to be utilized if they don't have computers at home. They started new art classes here and things like that. So through this group, We need to reach out to other people like you, teachers, the communication. We need you to let us know what languages you want this documentation, Spanish or different languages than South Grade would. But again, exactly, but I need to hear that from you because you're
Right.
there and you're working and we need those ideas coming from you. Sarah?
With the fact that there are a lot of rentals in that neighborhood, just for instance, somebody moved out last weekend and they just put whatever they didn't want out on the street. Isn't there a way that we can go back to the landlord and say, ultimately, you're responsible for this home? And before you come just stick a for rent sign in the front yard, you need to do stuff to clean up your house.
Absolutely, and
Because
that's.
right now, I would say that probably 9 to 12% of the ones that are on that list have for rent signs in the front windows and in the yards. I'm like, how can they rent something that looks like this?
Well, absolutely. There's a couple pieces there. One is the neighborhood associations in that neighborhood. I know in Mango Groves, we used to hang something on the door that said, you may have a code violation. We just want to enlighten you to this code violation before code. It kind of taken the nice approach. Most of these landlords, they know and they're playing the game, and that's where code needs to come in. Those need to come to me like you sent those to me. I sent them right to code. And that's where we're also identifying if you have a rental property, you need a renter's license.
Correct.
If you don't have a renter's license, you cannot rent that property, and therefore, when you get a renter's license, or we identify you don't have a renter's license, it automatically opens the door for us to do an inspection. And that's really what we want to do. We want to do the inspection. And I get a lot of people saying, well, they just came in the inspection, they touched the fire alarm, and they charged me. Because you had no violations. The ones that don't let us in or don't get renter's license are the problem properties. And when they put that stuff out, they automatically, from the other department, they're automatically getting a ticket on their door that goes on their utility bill. So they aren't paying, but
Not doing anything about
we
it.
don't necessarily want their money, we want them to come in compliance. We don't want the stuff out in the front yard. So there's a couple pieces to that. Javier?
The last 35 years I've been here, been working as a counselor and everything else. The major problem is most of it can't be written. It has to be oral. It has to be one-on-one. It has to be like in the mentoring program or in Highland and Bridges where we have contact with the parents and through the PA system in the school. That's the point of contact there. And also the neighborhoods are always shifting, you know that. They move, just when I take care of my neighborhood, that 1-2 blocks there, and just in that neighborhood, there's people who rent this house. The person they rent it to moves, and then another person stays there, and then they don't know what their responsibilities are, and that person moves. It's always shifting. So I think the biggest weakness we have is the landlord. And I've had big fights with landlords all the time. It's your property. It's we're supposed to tell the landlord over the city, and we're supposed to educate the renters.
Especially, that's very important
It's not my
because you know your neighborhood, you know your community. For us, for example, I live in the other side, you have the information to provide us.
I've already worked on it several years, but
Yeah.
anyway, some of the property owners do not live here. And they basically say, so what, who cares? So, a lot of times I ended up having those people evicted, the renters.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that we have done in the city too is we've identified through the utility department, it doesn't help if the utility isn't changed into somebody else's name, the landlord keeps it. But we're working on a packet, so when you come in, you turn on your utilities and it's a complete packet. But I asked to take it one step further that, you don't just hand them the packet and say, here's the information. The people there now need to open the packet and educate the people on the primary things, garbage pickup, where you would go for certain things in that language.
Finally, we're there.
So, the packages aren't quite ready yet, but, that is in the works because we identified. But if the utilities stays in the landlord's name, we're not going there with that. Phil?
Three of the most important things, Phil Ontario, 701 North Dixie. Three of the most important things is code enforcement. I think what Javier is absolutely right. We have a lot of absentee landlords and they don't even live in the city of Lakewood. What we need to do is, every time a rental license comes up, we need to make sure that landlord has a registered agent that either lives in the city or is a property manager that we can contact when there's a problem. Because what happens is, we can't contact, they're in Minnesota, Michigan, wherever they may be. They need to have a registered agent here so that we can contact them, and Andy, we want their money, okay? We want them to pay. If they're not doing anything, the only way they can recognize anything is paying money. Okay, when they pay money, they're gonna start doing something about it. And we need to put it with the special magistrate on their tax bill, not on their utility bill, because who's paying the utility bill? Not the landlords.
Thank you. Did I see a hand over here?
Is there a number to call? Because I represent the south side, I'm on 12th Avenue South. But there is a apartment building across the street from our facility that every month there's new renters. And I've gone to the mayor with pictures. I mean, there's carpets hanging over the roof, there's beds, thank you. There's beds in the yard, and it's a monthly thing. And it's an eyesore for a business. Is there a number that we can call when we see these things?
Well, there's a regular code department, but what I encourage you is to email them to me. If you've got pictures, if you've got numbers,
Your
I'll give you my
card?
card before I leave.
I have
Email,
pictures.
just like Sarah, because what I do is I email it over to the other departments, the city manager, everyone gets it, and then I monitor it. It pops up and I'll say, where are we with this? What's going on with it? I can track it on your behalf and then let you know. The misperceptions with code is, once you call code, it's gonna be fixed. There's processes and but I like to keep you in the loop and let you know where we are with it. I can't come on your property and force you to take down the rug, but I can, as code, cite you, and then there goes into fines, and there's other pieces if you do not remove that rug. So
What are the penalties for these owners that are absent? I mean, I own property in Ocala. I've got to make sure everything's okay with that, even though I'm not there. So what is?
Well, and like Phil said, one thing that we need to identify is the absentee landlords that actually have somebody on property,
Right.
or that we can call. We're having the same problems with the banks, it's just a plethora of problems. But we put in 13 new ordinances that actually address some of it, and one of it is actually board ups and cleanups, and we can actually put it on the taxes. Before, it used to go to the utilities, like Phil said, and they just changed it into somebody else's name, and that's why we've got a big pile of utility bills that haven't been paid. Katie?
Yeah, hi, I'm Katie McGivern, and I live in the Lake Osborne neighborhood. I'm not bilingual, but if we know certain cleanup's gonna happen, if you let us know, maybe we will do our best to get you some bodies there to help clean. And I think what you said was very important, the contact team for whatever area you're gonna be in, like the contact team to literally go door to door and to contact, I don't care if they're rental, I don't care if they're there for 2 weeks. I think the contact team is probably the most important part of this, because that's how you get the involvement. I mean, I don't wanna just be coming in, cleaning up a neighborhood, and then leaving because it's not my neighborhood. So I think, like you said, you've gotta get the neighborhood. I think it's just gonna be a snail process, map out your area, hit the area like a week before or whatever, bring food if you have to, but just do it like little area by little area. I mean.
Well, and that's, you touched on a couple different things. The cleanups that we've been doing on the West End, since I became city commissioner, we've been doing cleanups every other month. And we've been making an impact, we're getting a lot of garbage out, the mayor just did her cleanup, and we get a lot, but we find that we come back and get the same amount of garbage again.
Yeah, that's what I
So
mean.
we realize, the cleanup, it's a good thing, but there needs to be the next step. Like Katie said, we need the team to go out and knock on doors, educate. We need merchants in this area to participate, because some of the problems are with merchants. Where did I see?
Is there some kind of grant money that you can get? I'm sure there is, somewhere out there, that you can pay these people that live in this area to clean up. And I guarantee you, if you're paying them, they will all show up, and they will all know what you're doing. as well. So if they have dumpsters here and they're collecting on a certain day, if you're paying these people in this area to do the job, because they're all participating and they're all getting paid, that will be interesting to them. It's hard to fathom that you can change people, and their lifestyle. That's why, slums are slums, because that's their lifestyle. The landlords don't make it a slum. The people that live there make it a slum. So that to me is a way to get them at least to know what's, hey, dumpster's coming, we're getting paid $10 an hour, my brother's got the job, and the word spreads.
I know that there's grant money and the CRA is very aggressive with giving grants. I don't know that there's grant money to actually pay the people, but it's something to look into. I don't know that it works like that. Mark?
Andy, back to the landlords, because since I've moved into the city, I have sat through nearly when we had nuisance abatement and almost every special magistrate. And there are actually some landlord names who I've memorized because they are repeat offenders to multiple properties. So it's like really easy to start, because some of those usual faces that you say start getting tired of showing up to every cleanup, and some of them are to properties where these landlords are, fines are being reduced, ridiculous amounts, and it's like a joke. And I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but I'm saying if we had more support in terms of going after at least the repeat offenders who show up on special magistrate like it's a series on HBO, and there are some, it's public record. I've sat through all of them, and there are some names where I've actually memorized, and I missed when there's a special magistrate that they're not there. I say, oh, they skipped this one, but then indubitably enough, soon in the next one of their other properties. So if we had more teeth from the city and from the code with at least those egregious, the ones that are, repeated, and we lost our nuisance abatement, I don't know if that's coming back, to try and help as that part of one of the components to support those volunteers that are gonna be asked to continue, the work to try and help elevate our neighborhoods.
Well, and I've been sitting in on the special magistrate meetings too, and there's a lot of pieces to that. And again, some of the new ordinances we put forward, we're still aggressively trying to figure out what's going on with code internally. And for instance, I come across the same thing. A gentleman, 45 properties. He knows how to play the game. He's from Canada. Every time code finds him or comes after him, he changes the property into somebody else's name. He has property with dead people. The utilities are in the dead people's names. Now legally, I took it to our attorneys and they said, there's only so much you can do, because if the wife died, the husband still legally can live there but it's not really that. These people passed away. So there's a lot of pieces that, once you get into it, I was amazed listening and seeing how these people actually play the game and the rents they charge and what code is actually going through to try to identify and to try to come after them. And those people play the same game over and over and over. And unfortunately, they have a lot of property in the city. Yes?
Mine's kind of opposite of this gentleman over here. What is the accountability for these people? If you're not cleaning your own yard, are they accountable? I mean, how are you making them accountable to clean their own yard?
Well, again, there's a process, there's a code process. The first process, and it's all done legally, PBSO participates in some of it, but the first thing is if we get a complaint, code goes out, identifies the complaint, and they get a certain time to fix that.
Now, is it the landlord or the tenants? Because I think the tenants.
No, it actually goes to the landlord. The tenant is the landlord's responsibility. So, we have to go after who actually owns that property.
But not the one committing the violation.
If it's a crime, I mean, Captain Silva can speak to this. If it's actually a crime, then it'd fall under PBSO.
Let me explain where I'm with Oasis Health and Rehab. We're a skilled nursing facility, so we have 120 patients that are elderly that sit outside. My competitor, which is Terraces of Lake Worth, I know the marketer over there, Kathy, and I have been to the mayor several times to try to see what we can do. She actually has abandoned property in her yard that have rats. They're coming over to her property, so now it's kind of a health issue with her patients.
Absolutely, and that, I'm not familiar with it, but I'd like to get more information from you. But
Right.
something like that, I would think that would be more of a health issue.
They're not doing anything.
The health department and, you know, that's another whole piece to the pie.
Actually, we were told that if the residents who actually live there call and complain about it, they'll do something, but if a business calls and complains, there's nothing they can do. So at this point, do we get our resident council president to call? Where do we go to?
Commissioner can do it.
But we're supposed to take care of these patients.
You know, I can do it too. Once I get
Okay.
the information, we can sit down and try to figure out what I can do, or
Okay.
the city can do on that. You know, maybe it's just a couple calls. that, you know.
You know, thank you very much one more time. We have very good people, the bloggers here, they have disseminated all the information. We have Mr. West, we have Ana Maria, and of course we have Lynn Anderson, one of the best web pages here. She's going to help us to express all the information we have here. But you know, we have a list of problems we visualize, but we had to create a team to keep track of all these problems, and not throw out directly to the city. Because we're pushing everything to the city. I know Andy is trying to do the best to facilitate, to get us information, but more has to be from us. Maybe we can create a database, we have a map, we can create a problematic points on our city and concentrate, can be especially landlords. If the city is full, we can go after the city, but I mean, we, in this moment, we need a team. For example, you have incredible information, maybe you can participate as a member of the
I'd love
team.
to.
And that's where the neighborhoods too need to come in and step up.
At the moment, for example, you have more information about this neighborhood than anybody else.
We're here again saying, that's why we're improving here, little by little.
Yeah.
The Achilles tendon is city. We need the city to enforce this. We could go around, we could all be able to educate the kids, but if the landlord is not there, we're just going in. I'm still at it. I'm still cleaning up empty lots. I'm still gardening. I'm still picking up litter.
Yeah.
I do that almost on a daily basis. But you know what? Because I just kind of gave up on the city. Because those landlords, they laugh at me. They just laugh at you. We're picking up for free for them because I don't want to see it dirty.
Yeah.
And they're laughing at you. So the city has to have its part. We have to work in a partnership. And that partnership is right there.
But if we have the right organization with us, we can force the city
We've
to
had these
listen to us.
organizations for years.
And especially we
It's the
have
city.
Andy and we have a good commissioners. I know they are open
The city has
to.
to do the part.
Okay, I'm getting a lot of hands on that one, so let's start with Phil. And I'm taking notes, and we're taking notes, and we're gonna try to assimilate and
Javier's absolutely right. It's, all we're talking about here is what the city is supposed to be doing. I've been a member of Tropical Ridge Neighborhood Association for a lot of years now, and we have a membership of about 8, I think.
8?
Something. We need to figure out a way to, my only beef with the CRA ever is that you did all this NSP houses in the area and never really, I don't know how to say it, you didn't encourage them enough to join the neighborhood associations. You have great people coming into these houses and they couldn't care less about the neighborhood. We need to figure out a way.
You just
I
gave
have to
them a
interject
house.
because I'm one of the NSP program home finders. I
Okay.
wanted my neighborhood because I love my neighborhood, not because it's a slum, but because I believe in what the CRA is doing.
I believe
And
it
it's
too.
not that they didn't educate me, it's that there's just a lack of, as Andy said, education altogether. 90% of the people in my community don't speak my language.
We need to figure out
Therefore,
a
there's no way for me to communicate with them.
We need to figure out a way to instill pride in where they live.
Let me
That's
just
what it's
tell
all
you,
about.
let me just say,
It's
they do
having
have pride, because they
in
wouldn't
where
take
you
out their
live.
garbage in the recycle bins if they didn't have pride. They wouldn't do what everybody else does because it's easy to see what we do if they didn't know. They get their utility bill and everything's in English. They don't understand anything but the dollars that are there and they go to the utility company and pay it. They don't know what the newsletter says about when bulk pickup is and what's going on in the community because we don't reach out to them through the city in their language.
And that's where we're trying to change, and just to go a little bit where you said, Phil, every NSP2 home dedication was represented by that neighborhood association with the information, and they've gone back out. Anna Maria has gone back out and knocked on her neighbor's doors and said, what can we do? And this, But again, we still need to take it to the next level. That's why we're here, to start taking it to the next level in the languages, continuously reaching out, and you know, I've had it a long time before, because you have to remember, you know, there's a lot more code going on now
Right.
than there was before. It's just so overwhelming.
Right.
And if you read and follow the blogs, it's not unique to us. You know, it's every city, and it's just close to us because we're sitting in the middle of it. So, you know, we need to aggressively work through it and see what we can come up to get there. Thank you.
I
Sarah?
will say one thing, there's a lot of PBSO presence in my neighborhood, daily, nightly. But at 8 o'clock, you can hear a pin drop in my neighborhood. It's the quietest neighborhood in Lake Worth.
Where is that?
I live at 408 South E. So I live 2 blocks north of 6th. And what people used to, well, I've had a lot of people say, you live in that neighborhood? I'm like, it's the best neighborhood in Lake Worth. I lived for a year and a half. You can ask Emily and Christian.
She walks to work.
I walk to the gym that I own, like, and literally, my neighbors are up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to work. And they're coming home at 4 in the afternoon. They're not standing on the corner panhandling. They're not looking for a free ride. If you educate them and you reach out, the lady behind me just took over her home, and she's with Habitat for Humanity. She's Spanish. She speaks pretty good English, but we are able to communicate. She said to me, what are they gonna do about this house? The house right next to her is falling down. It's right behind my brand new home. So we're hoping that maybe with the NSP2 program, that if you're building a brand new home and there's a vacant one next to it, that vacant one needs to be addressed before we can move forward with a new home. Because as a new homeowner, I look out and I get into my
Or
car.
they're drinking in public, that, again, that's something you call the sheriff's department, you can do no trespassing and
Well, I've lived here, I'm born and raised, born in Bethesda. I've seen this neighborhood go from really, really nice to what it is. So you might see them doing things, but you can't, you just know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, but to prove it or to call the cops and say, hey, listen, I think there's a drug deal going down, they're gonna be gone by the time the cops get there.
But any time, call the cops, get them out there. The PBSO is great to get out there as fast as they can. And again, the more presence, you know, these people know how to play the game, they move from one end of the city to the other. It's the presence, you know. Like Sarah said, you know, after 8 o'clock, it's pretty quiet there, they are peaceful people. It's going on
I should do my
somewhere
tours
else.
at night then.
Exactly.
Mrs. Women,
Yes,
Mrs. Women.
Barbara Jean?
Two things, Commissioner, the neighborhood associations, I actually thought about it for Bryant Park. People who do move in don't know what we expect from new residents in the city, that we actually like it clean and just many of the items you were mentioning. So it strikes me that there could be a small team from each neighborhood association. I really think things have to be printed in other languages. The lady is right. They can't read it. What in the world does it mean? And many neighbors don't know. Also, with code enforcement, I don't recall the section I was reading, but the police department does have their, from what I read, as I recall, and excuse me, I don't know the section, there is teeth there. Landlords can be arrested for not doing certain things. Am I not correct on that?
I don't know what you're referring to, but
Yeah,
if
it's
they're
city
indeed they're
code.
breaking the law and it falls into that.
Yeah, they can be arrested, and I almost want to ask the question, how many arrests of landlords have been made in the city in the last 6 months?
Wes, did you have something?
Just what is the status of the nuisance abatement board? When I was on the planning and zoning board, there was, we also served the function of the nuisance abatement board when there were a combination of code and criminal problems at one property, and we could actually come in and shut a property down for 6 months or
Well,
a year.
and there's still, the other night when we went out with Captain Silva, they showed a couple of the problems and said that, you know, it almost falls into a nuisance abatement. So we still have that, and we need to aggressively work on that and bring it back in a stronger form if indeed that needs to be done. But we need to identify how many actually, it has to be, nuisance abatement actually is the point where, you know, a building has so much drug activity, it has to be documented for so many things going on before it falls in that category. So we can check with Captain Silva and see with code and see if there's anything that is in that area and is that bad. But, you know, you might see it as being that bad, but it may not be there yet. And Barbara Jean, as far as the neighborhood associations, what happened to, you know, some are more aggressive than others, but knocking on your neighbor's door with a basket of cookies and saying, you know, hi, welcome to the neighborhood, this is some of the things, you know.
Commissioner, if I may, you're familiar with Mr., I believe his name is Lurch, or Lynch?
That's the one I was referring to, yes.
Yes. Well, as a matter of fact, this sweet, very sweet, hardworking man who is Hispanic, and in fact, for Father's Day, Andy, well, first of all, he had commodes and bathtubs out and a big horrible sign, and knocked on his door and said, we can't do that here. But there's a flea market here if you want to sell them. I know you can make a ton of money. For Father's Day, I bought him a mango cream pie, and said, thank you for helping us keep the neighborhood beautiful. The cabinet was removed from the front. Different curtains are put in the front window on one side, not on both sides. So absolutely.
Little
to talk
things
to
like
them,
that mean a lot.
To just, well, they wound up hating me because I did get involved with their trees. We're gonna cut them down, and they're banyan trees, you know, 110 years old, and I'm like, oh, you can't. So their eyes roll a little, but I had to find a way, you're right, to soften it. But if we had a team of 5 people, say in a neighborhood, or 3, depending on the size, and had something printed in languages, then it bears my responsibility to make sure that residences get it. My neighbors who live next door, young, energetic people, good jobs, trashy as all get out. They just simply don't know it's not acceptable. We want to try and keep it beautiful. So, but thank you for your efforts.
Mark?
Andy, to piggyback on the printed material, I think it's a great idea, but again, I'll defer to having to agree with Javier. But in my experience, when I've tried to help translate with some people who master a second language, or Spanish is their primary language, or Haitian, some of them don't even know how to read in their own language because of the lack of education. You are gonna reach the most amount of people in small little groups, face-to-face meetings, or one-on-one and door knocking with a lot of the indigenous community because of the lack of education, even if we're assuming that it's just a lack of a language barrier. It's more than that. It's an education barrier in their own language as well.
I agree, and I think that was our
The biggest reach will be, yeah.
our primary thoughts there. And, you know, a lot of times when I knock on doors or I'm out talking to, I communicate through the children. And they do communicate okay, but again, it doesn't always communicate because, again, you're dealing with children. So there's a couple different steps there. Chip, did you have a question?
Yeah, what I've heard tonight is, it's something that the entire town has been grappling with for years and years. Somebody mentioned earlier tonight about paying people to come out and get involved in their neighborhood. But earlier than that, they talked about feeding in order to get more participation from people. And in one way, you can't take dollars and give it to them. However, if you were to have an event to come out in somebody's actual neighborhood, and you had a taco truck, for lack of anything better, set up out there and say, look, once we go through and we do a clean out, everybody show back over here. We have tacos and some Cokes or soft drinks and things like that. And it gets the parents and the kids, free ice cream for the kids to come out afterwards. And this is something that doesn't really cost an awful lot of money, but in a way it is paying them to come out and get involved. And at the same time, you would get that one-on-one FaceTime with them to be able to give a little bit of that information that Javier is talking about. The other thing that I don't know that was talked on, the amount of red tape that goes into citing somebody for code. Everybody says that you think that you can go out and just hit somebody with code. It is a process that unless we come up with some very, very out-of-the-box innovative ways to attack it, the process is a situation where somebody calls in, the inspector goes out, he looks at it, he has to look up who the owner is, and he sends them a notice. They have 45 days to respond to the notice. Okay, then if they don't respond in 45 days, then they're sent another notice, and then they've got an additional 90 days or whatever, the time frames. The sheriff's department, we were given a nice little presentation by the sheriff's department and given a tour of some of the worst areas. Captain Silva told us about it's one broken window
It's called
program?
the broken window theory.
The broken window theory is in that picture that was up on the screen here of 319 South C Street, is it? D. 319 South D Street is a perfect example. If somebody goes by there and they see that place is totally overgrown and nasty looking, and then of course, who cares if I throw a bottle, an empty bottle of water or something in there? Who cares if I throw my beer can in there because it's already messed up anyway? Or who cares if the window's broken? Instead of fixing the window, let's go ahead and break the next one, next to it, and see if we can hit that one. Some of these problems are going to take a lot of neighborhood involvement, and the neighborhood associations are possibly one of the best ways to address this and get people involved in that manner. But I'll tell you what, if this is a good first start, but I would definitely suggest, is there a show of hands people would like to see somebody like the CRA or the city getting involved and offering a food get together where you invite the entire neighborhood out in multi-languages and say, come on out and listen to what we're gonna do and have a bite to eat with us, and we'll talk about what needs to happen in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Something like that could
It's
go
on our
very,
list.
very well.
But also the advertising of those events. Personally, I didn't know about your cleanup.
We sent out emails, I mentioned it from the dais, so.
But
I'll
for
make sure
example,
you get-
talking about the barbecues, I have opportunity to walk in the neighborhood this morning, inviting people to come to this meeting, and the majority of the people who opened the doors, it was the kids, the children. And I asking them, well, what is your plan for the summer? Said, "No, we don't have plans, we have to stay at home." For example, this is another activities we can incorporate a lot of neighborhoods and you Javier no more than this. And for example, Benito Gaspar worked at the sheriff's office. He's expert in organize barbecues or putting together music or a small soccer championship. That would be way to bring together and at the same time try to educate and provide information for the people who assist at these different activities. And plus that will be good PR for the sheriff's office to show up like always they do to be part of the neighborhood.
Katie?
Yeah, I think tonight is good. We've had a lot of good ideas. The main thing about the contact team, door to door. If we do have an event, that the door to door hits the area a certain time beforehand with education. Food always helps. And also this gentleman had a pretty unique idea. We can work on that too. Let's see if there's grants out there. Also, another thing about code, I think from a state, legally, there's only so much that we can do. But I think isn't there gonna be a meeting where we could talk to the state, maybe the League of Cities that I am not a fan of, but anyway, hit it from a legal angle also. Maybe start changing the codes in some of our cities, and so legally we can do more faster. So maybe that's another prong to this that we have to.
I know the vice mayor is attending those meetings on behalf of
Yeah.
the city and trying to
All
figure
this is
out.
gonna be a pretty slow process, but if we keep working, hey, little by little, maybe. I know people come and go, it's gonna be very hard, but,
Well, and that's really what we're looking to do tonight. We're gonna take everything that we've heard from you and try to assimilate it and put it in some kind of a working form. And then hopefully you sign the guest list when you came in. So we'll keep you abreast on who, what, where, the first steps, and hopefully everybody can make it and get involved in some form. Sarah?
Couple things. What if we went back to the landlords and told them they had to have their property inspected once a year instead of when they're up for renewal? Why can't we enforce that these landlords have to have their property
It
inspected?
physically is once a year.
It is you.
But we
then
actually have.
they go 6 or 7 months and they haven't renewed their license and they get and the wayside, then there should be something that they have to.
Well, it's once a year and/or every time you change your utility. So, you know, if you're changing your utility every 3 or 4 or 5, 6 months, then it stimulates it. But if you, a lot of these landlords leave it in their name and just charge, so it doesn't do anything. So the next step is, you know, identifying that it is a rental property. And that's why if you call it in, it'll be a rental property. Stimulates an inspection, and then every year they'll come out.
My sister lived in 4 different houses in 2 years in the city of Lake Worth, and not one of them was ever inspected.
Exactly.
She changed the utilities every time she moved into her name, and there was never,
Well-
they were all not very nice places, so that's why she's no longer living in those.
Yeah.
Another thing is if we did maybe a block party instead of a cleanup. Maybe we just really made it a block party and shut off the streets and made it a community block party cleanup at the same time, that it would get more people involved. And this lady had a great idea. There's a lot of underprivileged kids in our neighborhood that don't have money to go to Merchants downtown or go to get an ice cream from Kilwins. What if we created Lake Worth Bucks and they came out to the cleanups and they earned those Lake Worth Bucks? Instead of paying their parents, paying these, 15, 14-year-old, 13-year-old kids that have nothing to do all summer, and they can actually come out and they can earn stuff that can be spent downtown or at the city pool, like she said, where we can generate them being involved and becoming responsible.
That's a good idea.
Anna Maria, was that what you
That was her idea.
highlight?
Well, that was my idea, but thank you. I did have, sorry.
I forgot I was
Where-
gonna say.
Let's finish with Anna Maria, and then we'll jump over.
I think visibility is really, really important, and the NSP2 houses are really great, but it left the rest of the neighborhood in the dust. And prior to the CRA taking on this major project, there were some really nice little programs that helped individual homeowners. And I don't want to say we are all rentals, but there are still homeowners, elderly people in this neighborhood who could use a little extra help with their homes, with beautification. And that was something that was dropped from the CRA programs. It's still listed there, but not doing it at this time because they got so busy with the big project. But now, the rest of them are sort of,
Well, let me highlight on
missing out.
that real quick, before we move on. It wasn't that they got busy with NSP2, it was because the taxes dried up. There's no funding for that anymore. So that's why you saw a list of some of the other things up there, like Paint Your Heart Out, and there's other organizations and/or people that are working with the CRA that will come out if we identify that they need painting, they need cleanup. Robert Wakels does a phenomenal job with his group. There's people that have stepped in and picked that up because the funding's just not there with the CRA anymore. The CRA gets their funding from the tax increments, and we all know that, especially in the CRA districts, a lot of
But
that's
most of the
driven
people
up.
are not connected to the internet or to that information source.
No, but that's where we as neighborhood associations, every neighborhood association needs to knock on these doors and say, what can we do to help? We used to do it in Mango Groves all the time. We would identify an elderly person or somebody that needed a paint job or some landscaping or something, and we would knock on the door and say, what can we do? And 99% of the time, they said, help me. I'll go over here.
Okay, my question is there any way to start changing some of these code enforcement laws? Because I know if I have somebody driving my car and they're speeding, you're not gonna give me a ticket, right? You're gonna give the person driving a ticket. So, and with her, you even said your sister's lived in 4 places in 2 years. So to do an annual inspection, there's people in and out there every 2 weeks. So maybe is there a registration for tenants to go register with the city? Every time.
There isn't, but like I said, I'd love to talk to you because you're new energy and you're somebody new, and I'd like to, because we are aggressively in the city. We've 13 new ordinances since the first of the year. Our vice mayor is actually going to a convention of code to try to get information and what might be working for someone else and bring it back, because there's a lot going on.
We can go to neighboring cities that are,
Absolutely.
Lantana, you can't park, opposite direction of where you're driving or you're gonna get a ticket. And it's working, it's working
Benito,
here.
did you have something to add?
My name is Benito Gaspar. I work at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office as a community outreach liaison. As mentioned earlier, we do a lot of outreach efforts with this community. Just this past weekend, we held a Guatemalan Consulate ID event where we had over 1,500 Guatemalans show up. to talk about the success we had, people waiting at 2 o'clock in the morning just to be seen, to receive their consular ID. Now, how do we go about to reach that community? It's reaching through the local Spanish media. I went on the radio stations, I was on the TV stations promoting the event. Now, before I proceed, I'd just like to just let it be known that although I don't live in the city of Lake Worth, I work in the city of Lake Worth. I spend more time here than I do in my own neighborhood. And it saddens me to hear that unfortunately my community is referred to as used as pronouns, they, them, that group. It's true. The reality is that most of the issues do arise in this community, but we have to keep in mind that Lake Worth is a diverse community, and we can't just point the finger to one group and say, it's them. And once we fix them.
Excuse me. I want to say something.
Hold on, Terry, hold on.
Yeah. It is true. It is true that the majority of the issues do come. But when I do my outreach, that's one of the things that we point to. I just don't deal with law enforcement issues. We also tackle quality of life issues. We'll talk about alcoholism. We talk about, again, quote unquote, the slums, the apartments they live in. What are some of the norms of the U.S. culture? Some of the things that they did in Guatemala are not normal here. So we try to touch upon that. And it's through information. Like when I talk to them, I tell them, I'm not gonna educate you. I'm not a teacher, you're not a student, you're not a child, you're an adult. And you're gonna behave like an adult. So I'm gonna inform you of what you need to do or what some of your options are.